So welcome to the Black Seats. Got a little exclusive here. I'm your host, Suge. We of course have my co-host from the parent show of this show, Mike, who along with me we make Suge Me the Mooney. And when I met Mike, both of us were like-minded individuals. So we definitely had like a mind for sports, a mind for wrestling, a mind for music, a mind for
History.
history and movies. So I wanted to talk about like history and sports because it's funny. I actually wanted to do this right after the election or around the election time. Now that but it's been 3 weeks since the election, and on one of these we talked about Mariano Rivera and his relationship with uh soon to be former President Trump and his support for him. So I thought to myself, because I know, and I've said it several times on Shook Me the Mooney, going to Yankee Stadium and stuff like that, you definitely know, if that place is 42,000 Yankee fans in attendance, like there's at least 30,000 of them, or 20, or half of them in there, or like, you know, MAGA people. But I thought to myself, because I thought during the election, and I've thought of how unlucky the Yankees have been in the past decade, being that this was the 2010s, and now including this year, 2020. It was the first time, the 2010s, that the Yankees had not only not won the World Series, but it was the first time since the 1910s. So it's been 100 years that there hadn't been a decade where the Yankees haven't gone to the World Series. So along with the 1980s, the Yankees didn't win the World Series in the 1980s, but they did go to the World Series in 1981. Um, they didn't go to the World Series in the 1910s or the 1900s. The Yankees, actually, the first 20 years of their existence, were actually one of like the bottom franchises in baseball. But
Right.
I
They actually
thought,
played in polo grounds. Like they were one of those guys who play. Like, they would play in other people's. They played in the Giants. They were that type of franchise at the time.
yeah, they were like the second rounds. As a lot of people know, the Yankees started off as the American League um New York team, and the American League actually was like, to this day they still get called, the National League is the senior circuit, and the American League is referred to as the junior circuit because the American League came around 20 years after the National League. So, the National League was always up here and the American League was down here. And the reason why the leagues are kind of like here, a lot of that has to do with the fact that for a lot of the early parts of the 20th century, the Yankees basically were winning all of these World Series. So you kind of say like the National League was like the better league when an American League team was winning a lot. But going back to New York, there was the New York Giants, who played in the Polo Grounds in North Harlem, and the Dodgers, who played in Brooklyn. But when I thought of as I said, when I thought of the election, I do recall like an episode of Mike Francesa. I think it was after the Yankees won in 2009, which currently is the last time the Yankees have won the World Series and been to the World Series. But he said, you know, there's two things if you ever look at like the parallels of where this thing is and where the Yankees are, where they find success and where they don't find success. And one of those were Kentucky basketball, which I can't really get into. But the other thing was usually the Yankees do well when there's a Democratic president. So something me and Joel used to bemoan on here is the fact that the Yankees for all these years have not been able to get over this hump. And I think if you look at the history, which I'm about to share with you guys, it shows that the Yankees do better when there's a Democrat in office as opposed to when there's a Republican in office.
Yeah, when Suge told me about that, I was very fascinated. That's why I want to hear about it. And actually, I peeked, and it looks the numbers line up, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it was actually better than I thought. So I'm gonna just break down each year with you guys. So I'm gonna start off with the Democrats. Now, with the Democrats, they were 23-3 as far as World Series were concerned. So they won 21 World Series and lost 3 during Democratic um administrations, and they were 6-10 during Republican administrations. The Democrats, that was the 21-3, that rounds out to a 875 winning percentage. If
hmm,
a team played 875 over 162 game season, the regular MLB season, that team would be roughly 141-21. And the Yankees record during Republican administrations, that winning percentage is 375, which if you play that over 162 seasons, that's 61 and 101, which is like second division, last place pace. But this is the World Series we're talking about. But we're really talking about how like the Yankees, like no team has won. The Yankees hold the record for most wins in a season and a postseason overall with 125 wins. But if you go on regular season, the record is the Seattle Mariners with 116 wins. Um, in two,
2001.
yeah, in 2001. So we're talking about 25 more wins than that, and only losing 21 games. If you looked at the Yankees' record in World Series win to loss, while Democrats were in office, and we're talking about them being a last place team if you took their record while Democrats were in office.
Right, it's fascinating. Like, I'm actually offhand before I even jump into the numbers. I'm thinking about when they lost to the Big Red Machine was like election month, right? For 76, pretty much. Wouldn't it be like the election month? And that was going from the
Yeah.
exiting Nixon, the failed Nixon administration, and then they lost in '81, which was Reagan's first year.
Mhm.
And then like Bush, of course, in 2001 comes to mind immediately. Um, and then in 2009 is obviously Obama's first year. So yeah, so I'm gonna hear more.
Yeah, so I broke it down by the presidents. So their first, so they won. Well, FDR is the president who actually is like the only president I served more than 2 terms. He served 4. So of
I was gonna
course,
say, as a joke, I was gonna say, you know, how, like the Yankees. When you think
yeah,
of the Yankees, like the ring, the 10 rings, that's like FDR. He was on his fourth term, and
yeah,
he died. It was kind of like that was kind of like the Yankees of the 40s and 50s. It parallel. It's very fast, very funny parallel.
yeah. So they won. So that's 16 years. But in those 16 years, they won 6 World Series: 1936, 1937, 1938, 1939, 1941, and 1943. So at one point, they had won 4 out of 4, 5, 6 titles. I think in 9, no, in 8 years. In during FDR's 4 terms.
Mm.
Then they then in Truman's presidency, they won in 1947, 1949, 1950, 1951, and 1952.
Mm.
So They won five straight World Series during Truman's term, and overall 6 out of 7 years during Truman's presidency. So those presidencies were back to back. So FDR and Truman altogether they had won 12 championships between two different presidents, and uh I think that's 5 terms. I think Truman only served 1 term. And
Yeah.
then JFK, they won 1961 and 1962 before he was tragically assassinated.
The anniversary was 2 days ago.
Exactly. And then President Carter, famous one-term president, but guess what? The 1977, 1978 Yankees. And who knows? They probably could have won 1979 again if tragedy hadn't struck and
The
Thurman
plane crash.
Munson
Yeah. Thurman
hadn't
Munson.
died.
And it's crazy. That happened all the time back then too. And I'm a wrestling guy, and like, a lot of guys had athletes would have private planes, and then they would go. That's what happened a lot of times. It was just
Hmm.
it's tragic.
And then um more recently and during our time on Earth, Mike,
Yep.
President
Uh,
President Bill Clinton, they won 96, 98, 99, 2000, four titles in 5 years.
and 2001 with one fucking pitch.
Well, 2001 I'm bring up because it's a famous World Series, but
Yes,
they
it was.
lost during a Republican president, but I'm gonna get to that.
Yep.
And then 2009, first year of President Obama, they won the World Series. And all of those times those were Democrats. And that is over the span of one, two, three, four, five, 6 different presidents. Mike, do you know how many presidents, Republican presidents, they've won altogether under?
Give me 15 seconds. I'm gonna think about it.
All
Okay.
right, so I did all the work so we didn't have to do this during the show. The Yankees, in their 100-year existence, they've only won World Series under 3 different Republican presidents.
Okay.
Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, and Dwight Eisenhower. They
Oh.
won their first World Series in 1923,
Hmm.
opened up Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium, to a World Championship. They won in 1927, Murderers Row, possibly the greatest team in baseball history. 1928, they also won. They actually lost. Well, I'm gonna get to that too.
No,
Um,
I was actually surprised. I thought Eisenhower was a Democrat. I didn't realize he was a Republican. I knew he was a general, but that's why I was shocked. Okay.
yeah, and then 1932, against the Chicago Cubs, famous for Babe Ruth allegedly calling his shot during the World Series at Wrigley Field. They
Hmm.
won that World Series, and then they won in 1956 and 1958. So, of all the championships the Yankees have won, they have not won a World Championship under a Republican president since 1958. So that means if you are a betting man over these last 4 years with Donald Trump as president, if the Yankees, if you had to bet against who's winning the World Series, are you betting for the Yankees or you betting for the field? Like you probably like your betting money would go towards the field because the Yankees, as you can see, overall are not successful during Republican administration. Ironic, coincidence or not?
Yankee Doodle Dandy. That's a Yankee Doodle of a dandy. A fact. I'm crazy. That's something that I actually told my brother and my dad about, and they were like, "Oh, really?" I didn't even think about that. You know.
Hmm.
And I love history. We all love history and stuff, and it's like fascinating that is it just coincidence? Rebuilding years? Do you consider the Republican terms of president rebuilding years? And what I
Yeah,
mean, something like that.
yeah, and then you look at it, it's only like a handful of World Series they've lost. Um, during Republican, I mean during Democratic administrations.
Mm.
1942, that was during under FDR. They lost that World Series. 1963. I think it still counts because JFK died a month later, so 63 counts as JFK, and then they lost in 1964. Um,
OBJ is,
yeah, for Lyndon Johnson. And it kind of coincided with Nixon getting elected afterwards in 1968. It and LBJ's terms, it kind of coincided with the Yankees like lean years, when they instituted the baseball draft, so the Yankees couldn't just go out and sign like the best players and stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, go to Kansas
They
City. We always have people in Kansas City. Remember?
Yeah, and they kind of had to readapt, and the fact that they only really had one black star player in Elson Howard, with the rest of the league, like they were starting to get more diverse with black and Hispanic players, and the Yankees, even though they had some, they didn't have as many as other teams. So,
Yeah.
things caught up.
Mm.
And
I
that's
remember.
something, like us Yankees fans, we really don't discuss because, a lot of these championships and stuff like that, they happened, pre Jackie Robinson and, when baseball was all white. And then the losses really piled up with um Republican presidents like Warren G. Harding. The first two times they went to the World Series, 1921, 1922, both World Series, actually, interesting fact, all took place in one stadium, the Polo Grounds, because as we said
Oh,
earlier in the show, like the Polo Grounds was, they hosted the Yankees and the New York Giants.
yeah.
And the
And we all know
Giants,
that 1923 is like the original Yankee Stadium. We all know that.
yeah, as I said that earlier. Um so 1922, 1921, and 1922, the Giants beat them. Um that was under Harden. Calvin Coolidge, they lost the 1926 World Series. They lost, I believe, in 7 games to the Cardinals. The last out of that World Series was Babe Ruth getting caught stealing at second. So that's one of the things I remember about that, or I know about that World Series. I'm not saying I remember because I wasn't there. I was roughly 74 years before I was born. No, 64 years before I was born. Um,
Hmm.
Gerald Ford. Oh, not I skipped. I'm sorry, I skipped over Gerald Ford. Um, Eisenhower. They lost the 1955 World Series, which was when Brooklyn finally got over the hump and beat the Yankees in 7 games. 1957, the Milwaukee Braves, they beat us. 1960, the famous Bill Mazeroski game-winning home run for the Pirates against us, where the Yankees actually outscored them during our World Series. Um, then Gerald Ford, he became the president, like Mike said, after Richard Nixon resigned, and the only World Series the Yankees were in while he was president, 1976, they got swept by the Big Red Machine, who won their second consecutive World Series, and the Reds are actually the most recent National League team to have won back-to-back World Series. This has not been done since 1975 and 76 in the
Hmm.
National League. And then Ronald Reagan, Mike also said, 1981, his first year as president. They lost the World Series. They won the first 2 games and then lost the last 4 games. Also was a weird year because it was a strike year. That
No,
year,
which year was a strike year?
1981.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Well,
Yeah. So what happened that year was it was actually the first time the division series was used because the season ended midway, uh partially through June, and then it picked up in August. And what they basically said
wow.
was, instead of teams picking up where they left off, they would, you know, whoever had the best record during the first half of the season and whoever had the best record during the second half of the season, they would face each other, and if it was the same team, then the team with the second best record would face them. And it was a weird um thing. It kind of reminded me of this year with
I
this
don't know.
shortened season.
That's weird. When people, no, I know I go off. I always go on a tangent, but that's interesting because it happened before, not just this year. So yeah.
Yeah, and then George Bush, 2001 and 2003, they lost both of those World Series. 2001, it would have been they were actually 3 outs away from winning their fourth consecutive World Series. Mariano Rivera blew that save, something we also discussed on a prior episode of this. 2003, it was crazy because the Yankees were heavily favored against the Florida Marlins, and they ended up losing in six. So, you know, eh, like I said, I really hadn't looked into the numbers until during the election while we were waiting for the results, because as you know, it kind of got dragged on a lot longer than it usually does in an election year. And when I deep dived the numbers, and I was like, wow, like the Yankees won 18 more World Series than they lost, or they won 18 of 24 World Series while Democrats were president, and then they lost 10 of 16 World Series with Republican um president. So it kind of shocked me when I actually crunched the numbers.
You know, I'm a big fan of history and baseball, and Ken Burns' baseball is like one of my favorite things I've ever seen, documentary wise. I didn't even know about 81. I didn't know 81 was a weird year like that where it was different. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it's always, I always learn something new. And so let's see what with Biden now. Um, hey, maybe this is the year.
Yeah.
Maybe this is our year. Maybe we were meant to lose. And of course, Houston winning is going to be corrupt. You know? Lock them up. Maybe like we'll throw it away.
Yankees when Democrats are in office versus when Republicans are in office. So if you're a Yankee fan and you voted for Trump, then you voted against the Yankees winning the World Series in the near future. I never really thought about it till I only really think about it during election years, because of what happened on Francesa, or what Francesa said, and I didn't look into the actual numbers, because off the top of your head, you're thinking oh yeah, FDR was president, so they won a lot then, you know. Oh, Clinton was the president, so that's the last major baseball dynasty, blah 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 blah. And they won in '09, and that's when he said it. And I really wish they would have won more during Obama's presidency. But the thing I think about, I was like, the one thing in all of these times that they've lost, 2017, 2018, 2019, this year, well, not really this year, but 2018, 2017 to 2019, I'm like, yo, if we would have won the World Series, right? Oh my God, I would have to watch my Yankees, my favorite team, because I'm a Nick fan, I'm a Yankee fan, Nick fan, Giant fan, Ranger fan, but I love the Yankees. Like my Yankee fandom is above all the rest of them. Like that's why I do this show. And I thought about it. I was like, yo, I don't know what. I don't know how I could like Aaron Judge or one of my favorite players on the team after seeing them hugging up. I mean, probably not hugging, but shaking Trump's hand and smiling and taking pictures with him and shit. And I'm so glad that now, moving forward, if they win, it'll be shaking hands with President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, and if we have one of those FDR runs or early 2000 runs where we win like five straight or something like that. Who knows? It's never out of the question with the Yankees. That's what we do. 27 world championships. That's what we do. They're shaking Biden's hand and they're shaking Kamala's hand. Like that's what I hope for. But I would have been really disappointed because I know there's a lot of people that they feel it ain't really that they support Trump or anything like that, but it's just like, oh, like, this might be the only championship I ever win, and it's like you kind of want to go, you like that's part of it, going to the White House, and it's kind of sad because no NBA champion has gone to the White House since he's been president.
Mm.
Every single sports team except for like the college teams, they're kind of like truncated. There's a lot of people that just don't go, and it's flat out like now, like with Biden back in, and hopefully like the Republicans do their thing, kind of like get their house in order and come back to like a respectable place where if they decided to choose somebody to be president, I could be like, oh, like, that's this Republican person, da, 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 da. Like I don't care if like when the Yankees would go when Bush was there, or they'd go when some other Republican president was there. It wasn't a big deal, or any other team that you didn't care that they went to the Bush White House. Like it was just like, all right, they went to the White House. But now with like Trump, it's like, nah, he's like a shit person. So
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lack of decency, just like a human being shit.
I mean, like the way I kind of like characterize it, like from the jump with Trump, but from like the get go, I always think of like presidents. It's like, yeah, like I disagree with you, but if you're still like a decent person, like I wouldn't mind, like if I could think of that person, inviting that person to dinner, I would. Obviously, all the Democrats, I would. Bush, I disagreed with him, but I could still see myself like sharing a meal with that person. Romney, McCain, God rest his soul. Probably not Ronald Reagan because he might try to like put like crack rocks in my house planet, and then he'd walk out and then call the police. Where
But you can talk old Hollywood with him,
did that
though.
come from?
You can talk old Hollywood with him, though. I know me and you share our love for old Hollywood. You
Oh
know.
my god. Nah,
Oh,
so
that
yo,
was a good movie. That was a good movie. One second. I have to put a little crack rock on this guy over here. Yes, yes.
nah, no,
Anyway, Casablanca. Yeah, let's talk about Casablanca. He was the president of SAG.
no, it's funny as well because I had a picture like on Twitter like a while ago, and it was like Reagan with like Venus and Serena Williams, and he had a Gucci belt. And it was like somebody put the caption. It was like, "Yo, the first drug dealer." It was like Reagan was the first drug dealer to flex in a picture with a Gucci belt on.
And no lies told. That just started in. Hey, that started in when the Yankees weren't winning anymore in '68.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure it was funny. And then if you ever watched that if you ever seen like the 1984, a lot of people were circulating that too, like the Walter Mondale Reagan map, and it was like all red, and like
Oh my god.
the only Democrat, the only blue state was Minnesota, and somebody was like, "Yo, that drug lord was whooping Walter Mondale's ass." Yeah,
It
but
was bad too.
like I said, I hope that the Yankees win sometime sooner the better, especially next year. Because if it ain't next year, like everybody got to get fired at this point.
Will
Um,
will there be a live Sherby the Mooney from or Black Seats from Yankee Stadium in a year in next summer? No, right? Maybe
we'll,
2022.
we'll get there. I think they'll have like I think once the vaccines out and it's like the rate of cases
Or
goes down, like if it really like starts to go down to like a really low level, then yeah, I think people would.
yeah, I feel like they're gonna like redesign the seats too, so it's gonna be like spread out now
Yeah, they
and
could do
less.
something like that. Well, all of them other places that really don't give a crap about people when I mean that don't give a crap
Hey,
about COVID, like Texas, Florida, all of these college places and these red states, like they're having fans in the stands already. So you kind of got like the blueprint